Hi there, and thank you for clicking on my video. We're going to be talking about stance choice and more particularly headshot multipliers and a bit on follow through and how it destroys your damage. But first, I want to give a massive thank you to Tanner Lindbergh. He gave me a shout out as I was leaving for a friend's house last week. Um, and in basically a couple of days where I couldn't say anything other than a Discord message saying thank you. I haven't been able to post a YouTube video officially thanking him. Um, as of like 20 minutes ago, I am officially at 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I I was at like 440 subs before the shout out that he gave me. And no exaggeration, he more than doubled my sub count. I am incredibly grateful. I will try to make the shout out worthwhile. Um, Due to me actually hitting 1,000, I'm thinking of doing a giveaway. Uh, I thought it would be a little poetic if I actually gave away a Panzer Vulpaphyla that had all of the resistances stacked on it, like 2 genetic imprints, so somebody could actually use it, even if they're a new player. So as of right now, first person to reply Panzer in the comment section will get it. I already have it ready. It'll just be something that I try to get in contact with them. It'll probably be tomorrow or the next day. It will be this week that I give it away, but I will figure out a way to get a hold of you. It's probably going to be somebody from either my clan or alliance, or probably from Tanner's channel. I will post a link to any of my people that aren't familiar with him, because that's who most of my viewers are. So let me give you a return shout out, because there's a lot of endurance runners and people who are growing and looking for groups more specifically. For those that don't know, Tanner does very high-end content. He does long endurance runs, and one of the frustrating things about being part of that part of Warframe is frankly finding a group. So I'll post a link to his channel, but if you go to his Discord, even I'm in here, and he has several sections for long runs, and this is in terms of like the variety of people wanting to do 1 hour runs of whatever. It could be fishers, it could be steel path fishers, it could be endurance runs. There's even an RB group, though, to be honest, they just kind of meme on it. Justifiably. But if you are looking, and you are anybody in my group, and you are looking for long runs, I would actually recommend joining his Discord so you can actually get exposed to very experienced people, and more importantly, have access to a readily available group of people. I see posts all the time for people wanting to do like a 1 hour run plus. Obviously, the level cap runs are going to be few and far between, because not many people are going to have time to sit down and do an 8.5 hour level cap endurance. But disruption runs, you could probably find. Fishers, you could easily find a 1-2 hour run. Especially with Steel Path and how it's just so easy to farm it now. So I'm going to post a link to his channel. Give him a sub if you enjoy his content. Check out a couple of his videos. But I'm going to be doing the Panzer giveaway. Because I figured it would be poetic, because it was actually the first time Tanner and I became aware of each other. that I'm aware of. I know he watched my Korra video, but I don't think he commented on it. Or the Dual Kara's video, where I was comparing the Nami Skyla to the Dual Kara's Prime variants. And I know he really enjoyed the math on it, as do I. I love those sorts of breakdowns, and you don't find them on YouTube because they take forever. One, two. Anytime somebody talks about it, it's in some Excel sheet, and you never actually see the math broken down. It's in some graph where you can see, okay, this is the relationship, but the relationship is pretty easy to explain, and the math is the big deal. Once you understand the math, the graph will make infinitely more sense. So him and I are of like mind on that, where we enjoy seeing the actual data broken down and compared properly. That being said, going to be doing the Panzer giveaway because that was his Sentinel video was the first thing that I became aware of. And it's one of those things where it's like I've been playing so long, it's extremely rare for me to find something new. And on my Panzer video, I gave him a shout out in terms of like, and back then, our channels were the same size. Now, obviously, he's doing significantly better, and that is wonderful for him. But I think it would be poetic because that would be the first time we really interacted with each other. So, first person to comment is going to get a Panzer Multiplier with all of the resistance on it. You'll get 2 imprints, so you can just throw it in the machine, cook it, and in 24 hours, you're going to have a Vulpafile with all of the resistances stacked. And I'll get in contact with the person over the next couple of days. But the first person to comment, I'll get your in-game ID. As long as you're on PC, so this is going to be PC only, because I don't have any other accounts other than PC. So that's the only condition. But there you go. Now to continue with what I was going to talk about today. I wanted to talk about like hidden multipliers on melee stances. I was doing some testing trying to find where exactly the bug is, because as of right now, the Slaytra is the newest melee in Warframe, and it's supposed to have a unique passive where it doubles the time, the duration on slash procs. And it led to me breaking down the math and trying to figure out exactly where it was, and it's just straight up not here right now. Like every single form, but when I was doing so, I came up with when I was testing headshots specifically, and I know in the Clan Inner Alliance, they're definitely used to me saying, "Oh, use this stance because it has an early headshot." Or use this stance because it has easy headshots or something like that when talking about a melee. And this is one of the things where it is kind of cool, especially when you're newer and you're modding early. Is it is enjoyable to see big damage numbers. Like until you like can regularly like hit hundreds of millions. It is really enjoyable to see that occasional like 5 million damage, 10 million damage. Maybe you'll hit like 100 million, where your damage is normally like 30, 40, 50k, right? So I kind of wanted to explain where that is coming from and where those multipliers are actually showing up at. And almost all of it has to do with when you're spamming melee, you get a random headshot. Now that's not unknown, right? Like that's pretty normal. You can hear it. You hear the crunch. The guy explodes into a billion pieces, and you see the damage number. But I wanted to break down exactly what's going on, because if you hit something with a headshot that is a crit, you have an additional 6x multiplier on your damage. So I just wanted to go over what it was and like why stance choice and turn it into a more broad idea and why stance choice is so important. And on machetes, this is particularly important. So right now I have the Slaytra, got a skin on it. Actually, let me get rid of that just so we're not confusing anything. Okay, so Slaytra. Let's go over the stances. Cyclone Kraken. I like Cyclone Kraken. This is from Kuva Caches. It has a low, not incredibly aggravating chance to drop. It is probably going to require a couple runs, though obviously you could be lucky and RNG it in the first 2-3 runs. But like for me, I think this took me 15 runs to get it, and it's like a 10% drop chance. I can look it up actually. Nope. Okay, it's rotation C of the Kuva Exterminate. Let's see exactly what it is. Okay, it's rotation C. It's got a 10.79. Sorry for blinding you. 10.79% drop chance on Dakota. So it's from caches. So this is going to be the frustrating part, is because it's caches and it's rotation C, and it's got a 10% drop chance. When I farmed this up, I actually used people from the Alliance and the Clan, and somebody that was just trying to farm the last couple of mods that they missed. You have to intentionally go farm this. And the reason why this stance is so good, especially for machetes. Now, the wiki is kind of bugged right now. None of the icons are showing up. But this is the Cyclone Kraken page, right? There is a 300% increase, or a 300% hit. So a 200% increase, right? On the damage from your auto, standing auto, not moving forward. But it's a headshot. So if you crit on the headshot, this 300% will then get multiplied by the headshot multiplier, which is 3x. And then if you crit, it will then get multiplied again on top of everything else by another 2x. So I'm going to be able, and I'm going to show it in a second, but I will be able to hit on a crit headshot 10 to 12,000. I think it's like 11 I think it's like 11.4k slash hit on a headshot on a weapon with no damage mods. And it is purely multipliers built into the stance, where I'm hitting, and if I crit, I will then get a 1.9x multiplier, so another 90% increase, right? So here's the build. This is testing. This is just to show the effect of the multipliers, and why you always hear me when people are asking me questions about what to mod. And to test out what is a good thing, you literally just have to play with the stance. Like, this is a really easy one tap most of the time. In order to aim it, the headshot that you're trying to aim is right over where your hand is. So if you look vertically above where your hand is, you just sort of have to aim there. And for some reason, headshots are a little bugged. So, okay, no combo counter, no damage. no multiplier, and an 8300 or an 8392 slash proc. Now, obviously, that was generous because we got the headshot. We got, okay, so that was a crit. 11,327. And for some reason, this stance feels bugged because I should not be double procking. I'm thinking this weapon might have an issue like the Hespar did. Let me just check again, because there is... Yeah, there is a forced impact, but there is not a forced slash. Can't even see the icon right now. So there's a forced impact. So just from that, now let's add damage multipliers, because I literally just have combo counter duration and stuff to give me crit. If I take the crit off and just deal with like base multipliers, the damage is still going to be impressive. So 1,000. That's not bad for 0 damage. Actually, I think because I took the mods off, it bugged. Give me 1 second. I'm going to reload. One of the problems with testing in the simulacrum is when you swap out mods, occasionally stuff will subtract or add twice. The most notorious thing is like dual daggers with like 4 slashes. Is occasionally you'll get like the elemental mods applying, and you have to watch it. So okay, 3984. This is what our actual slash damage is, non-bugged. That wasn't a headshot. Okay, so 1049. Now, one of the reasons why this stance, and pretty much the only reason why this stance is more preferable, is the other stance has a headshot in it too. But Cyclone Kraken has it on the first swing, which is way better for running through a mission. The other one has the headshot on the third hit. And it's particularly nasty too. When it procs. Okay, so 2798. So the multiplier is so high. This is that 9300 was a ground finisher slash proc. The one behind it, the 8537, I think, was a slash proc that was standing, but I hit them on the head. So when you're doing builds, it is really beneficial for you to just go in the simulacrum and test out all the stances and see what the hit is. And it's pretty easy because you can see the motion. It's the little white effect. Pick something that's easy to see when you're starting out. Normally you'll be able to see what it is. So like this is like an area of effect. It's like a cone. But then you have to consider multipliers also. So okay. This brings us into the next thing. I just wanted to cover that real quick because when I was messing around with this, the headshot multiplier was incredibly apparent. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was why garbage weapons when dealing with AoEs can sometimes do better than like a high tier weapon. I know that seems counterproductive, pardon. But let's do Gyre for grouping. It's nice and quick. And we'll do something really nasty. What's the Hess bar at? 0.4. Okay, the follow through on this weapon's garbage. Okay, so 0.4 follow through. Our damage is going to get murdered. I need more enemies. Hold on. Let him group. Let him stand up. Okay, so watch the damage numbers. It's going to start out over here with like a normal hit, right? And by the time it gets over here, because the attack goes left to right, right? By the time it gets to over here, the numbers are going to be black. You can barely see them. See how there's the 1/? It's because of the follow through. It absolutely murders your damage because it's exponential damage reduction. So when you have things, and I'm not saying it's an actual, it's kind of a Chad weapon when you think about it, but exalted weapons like Wukong Staff, right? Or Valkyr Talons, the reason why they tend to be so strong when dealing with groups, where their initial damage when they're quick attack builds might be a little lackluster, but where they massively make up for it is in the fact that they really don't have fall off. So where before you could see my damage easily go from the initial hit, which was whatever it was, to halfway through the group doing nothing. There is a relationship between how much range you have on a weapon and how much follow through you have. There is actually a point when, say, dealing with like fist weapons. The Ticos. Hold on, and I'll come back to that. These are notorious for it. 0.9 follow through, amazing, almost exalted weapon level, and the Ghoul Saw is the exception. Okay, fist weapons are super good with follow through. So if you're rolling a Riven, you can roll a completely garbage Riven for a fist weapon, and as long as you have range on it, and you can get double range, because you can see my range is 7.46 with the Riven, and I have faction damage because it's a slash weapon, right? So I have a 3.1 range Riven with 71% damage to Grineer, plus primed smite Grineer. So all of my damage is slash damage. I'm not dealing any other damage type with this. So with this, because I have the range, I will then be able to hit everything with very little compared to what it was. I will be able to hit all of the enemies in one swing. So my kills per second is actually going to do better. Every single enemy got hit. And the slash damage, you can see with the ticks, will hold up. Because I have a better range than the Hespar on these. And I have all the faction damage. But more importantly, the thing that is increasing my damage the most is the follow-through. As much faction damage and crit that I have on this, like 100k slash, and it was like what? Like a 4-5x combo heavy attack? The thing that is increasing my effective damage the most, so 109 on a 5x. The thing that is actually increasing my damage the most on this weapon is the high follow-through stat. Because each time you hit an enemy with your swing, now you're attacking quickly, right? So every time you get to a new part of the combo, the quote-unquote follow-through resets, metaphorically. So it's not constantly getting drained, but when you deal with like fist weapons, if you can roll range on them, if you're doing a Riven, And in some senses, it is actually better to run double, if not triple range on fist weapons to take advantage of the follow through stat. Because when you deal with something like the Hespar is a heavy attack weapon. And it's not because it wants to be. It's because the follow through makes it be. It's never going to be able to deal with hordes and hordes and hordes of enemies when they're tightly grouped on you. So say you're doing like a camp, or you've decided to like stay in a tunnel or something. If you're running around and hitting like 2-3 enemies, the damage isn't that bad. But as soon as you start hitting like 4 or 5 enemies, you're doing almost nothing to that last enemy. But with the fist weapon, there could be 50 enemies in front of you, and you're still hitting them all. So this sort of dynamic actually brought me up to the third tier of this conversation. Because this isn't inherently new. Like, if you know what it is, you know to consider it. The difference between a 0.4 follow through and a 0.6 follow through is massive. Though 0.9 would obviously be better. Going from a garbage follow through to a decent one is a bigger jump than going from like a decent follow through to an amazing one. Unless it's like 0.6 to 1.0. Just the way the exponential multiplier works, right? Because every single time you hit an enemy with the Ticos, my damage will go down 90%, or go down 10%. Because it's 1 minus 1.9 divided by 1, right? So for like the Hespar, it would be 1 minus 0.4 divided by 1 each time I pass through an enemy. So it destroys your damage. Okay. So for these, I could actually get rid of, if I'm dealing with hordes of enemies, specifically in like a solo scenario where everything's running at me, there is something to consider when modding if you're doing solo gameplay on what type of weapon you're using. If you're playing solo, it might actually be better in terms of kill rate, especially with grouping abilities. So say like Gyre, for example, right? Or like Nidus with Nidus 2. To ditch the faction damage, or keep the faction damage, but go with a weapon with lower range, so you're not hitting so many enemies, or pick a weapon with more follow through. So say for like Nidus, where you can group 20 enemies into a ball, follow through is your most important stat. It is almost worth getting rid of range. It is so important. So the Ticos are fantastic on Nidus. If you're killing everything that you've grouped, Gyre does really well with the Ticos also, because you group them, you just burn through them in the ball, and you hit all of them. So let's see it again. And this is one of the issues with the Hespar, right? So the follow through is the big stat, especially when you're grouping a ton of enemies. And it's part of the reason why it's so disappointing with the Hespar. I would have figured it would have a better follow through stat, considering the frame that it came with. It has a grouping ability. Why doesn't it have the ability to then hit all of the enemies in the grouped ball? But it doesn't, and that's here nor there, right? So it's food for thought. A 0.4 dispo, it's really, really difficult to get through, say, like 10 enemies. But if you have like a 0.9, you can go through like 50 and still be doing damage. Now, obviously, that's a little overkill, but when you're dealing with frames with grouping abilities like Gyre, or Nidus, or say Cora and Snare, where you're really getting your kills per second on a grouping ability. You're getting your kills per second up based on a grouping ability. Follow through becomes ultra important. So keep this in mind when you're modding. Um, it's almost better to go with a weaker weapon that has a way better follow through if you're killing with a grouped ability. So say like, for example, it would be better for me to go with the regular Ticos than to go with the Hespar when dealing with Gyre if I'm trying to do the rhythm, the gameplay loop, like my ability loop of come in, group them, kill everything in the ball as fast as possible, or use maybe like an AoE gun. I know they got nerfed, but if you're shooting 20 things at one time, you're going to do damage, right? Um, so if you're doing a melee kill style and you want to use melee, and it's a choice, right? Like if you don't want to, then follow through. Who cares? You're using like a Brahma or a Tsar, or should be using the Tonkor right now. But if you want to use melee, follow through when you're using grouped abilities is your most important stat. Almost as important as say like crit chance and status chance, which is kind of insane when you're dealing with grouped abilities. The more you group, the better the follow through stat becomes. So for the Ticos, super good on Nidus, super good on Gyre. And snare builds, super good on that. The only thing I don't like about the stance is this stance actually really likes ground finishers for some reason. Like it seems like it procs this way more than any other stance. But the weapon damage and the fact that it's slash weighted carries it. So it is what it is. And for the final thing, I wanted to talk a little bit about paired stats. Now you probably just heard me say that. There's no actual jargon for this. I was talking with another Warframe content creator, No Quarter, a bit about like follow through, and that's part of where this came from. And I'll put a link in the bottom to him also, because he's doing YouTube now. There are specific stats that heavily influence each other. Say like crit chance and crit multiplier, right? If you're building a crit weapon, those are your two stats, right? Like everything else is like, yeah, like a consideration, but those two stats together, if you're trying to do a crit weapon, a weapon that you can get the red crits or orange crits is significantly better than a weapon that can barely get to yellows. Like even when you consider faction damage, going from yellows to oranges, it's better to equip faction damage. Going from orange to reds, it's better to equip faction damage. But when you're comparing yellows to reds, you obviously want the reds, even when you're dealing with dots. So if it's two jumps, faction damage isn't that important. But that's choosing between weapons, because generally, if a weapon has trouble getting to yellows, and you're not doing something like an Avenger build or say like Harrow, right? Where you basically get red crits for free. You really don't have the ability to mod a weapon that barely gets to yellows to reds without absolutely destroying your build. So this is going to be weapon comparison. So like apples to oranges, but like you're comparing one stat that you actually can compare. So when you guys are modding in the clan and the alliance, one of the ways that I figure out, and it's probably the most important way, on how to figure out what a weapon is going to be good at, and this is dealing with like long runs and like how to abuse certain stats and whatnot. And it's not really like five head gigabrained thinking, but if you're new to modding, as a lot of you guys are, one of the things you need to start thinking about is like say crit chance and crit multiplier. If you're trying to do red crits, these are your two go-to stats and base damage. Because if you're doing a slash build and you are doing a red crit slash build, you are essentially trying to one bang the enemy. Right? Like say, ooh, okay. Venkas with Malicious Raptor. This can get nasty multipliers. Not that one. Yeah, this build. Okay, with Malicious Raptor, it has several forced slash procs. On the initial hit, the standing auto. So how you kill with this is you walk up casually, right, to the nearest level cap enemy, and you're priming it as you go there, and you walk up and just auto it a couple times and the thing fucking explodes. You don't need attack speed on this build because it's all in the stance. Look, crit chance, crit damage on the Riven, Weeping to help with more slash procs, but it's crit. I'm not even running attack speed on it because it's a crit build. Now, obviously, there's some math saying the opposite, but let me show you the difference. You can run strike, and it's probably smart to run strike. That's all I'm trying to do, is I just walk up and just pop them a little bit. Right? Couple thousand, nice little 2200 slash damage. Or 22,000 slash damage. But when you start priming, those numbers get pretty nutty. But I'm not actually trying to, like, mass dot them. It's all multipliers. And it's the stance giving me all of the attack speed, because it's a quick jab, right? It's on the stance. So for this, it would be a crit damage build. And I know plenty of endurance runners that will gladly abuse a quick stance with force slash and just dump stat. Not necessarily run a negative on the Riven, but just ignore attack speed. Because all they're trying to do is go up to an enemy, hit it once, and it just explodes. They're not trying to mass apply slash. They're putting everything into one slash proc. So in terms of like modding for this would be a good example of a crit damage, crit chance, single hit. Now, if you're trying to do, and it wouldn't care about attack speed, but now here's the opposite. If you have a higher status chance weapon, where the crit multiplier isn't so much, but it has a really good status chance, say something like mid-30s and above, right? Like something really you really get your hands on. Attack speed becomes more important, and you don't give a shit about crit chance. Because you're getting your damage from multiple procs of the status. So instead of getting one hit with like a crit multiplier, what you're trying to do is you're trying to double or triple or quadruple the number of procs that you get. Now, obviously, due to DE's current idea of what counts as a tank and ways of tanking, they're status capping strong enemies. So clearly one of these is more favorable in the meta, right? Because like Acolytes, you can't throw 100 procs at anything on them. They're capped at 4, and I think, what, Impact is 6, and Radiation is 6? There's another one that goes over 4. There's 2, right? So if you're trying to get like one super strong slash proc, you would run this, and anytime an Acolyte shows up and dares to be in your presence, you just heavy attack the bastard and it dies in 2 slash ticks. Like, you literally don't attack it again. It shows up, bam, you hit it with a heavy attack and you walk off and the thing fucking dies. Right? But if you're trying to do, say, like Corpus, this tends to be a little bit more effective with Corpus because you're trying to actually kill with Toxin procs itself. Because you can get Impact, Puncture, Slash, forced procs on, actually, not Puncture. Puncture is actually pretty rare, but I think there are a couple forced Puncture procs, but they're super rare though. It's mostly forced Impact and Slash, and then you have like Lifted Status and Ragdoll and Knockdown and Lift, right? So those are the most of the ones that you're gonna find. So that sort of stuff. Um, it's a little out of meta, but how you would abuse it, and it's becomes relevant when dealing with, say, Demolus, because even though it seems counterintuitive, right? Obviously, in the current meta, you would want a heavy damage, crit chance, crit damage build, but the Convectrix is about applying multiple slash procs. You're not getting huge slash procs off of like a single slash proc. When you see a million damage slash proc from the Convectrix, it's because you've applied like 15 slash procs at once. So the damage is definitely there for this. So it's a beam weapon, so you get the double tick. You get the multi-shot, but because there's no spread, right? You only see the two beams. The multi-shot all applies slash. Then you get each of the multi-hit, the two beams, and then you get headshot multipliers, and then you get status chance jacking it up because it's so high. And then you'll RNG some orange hits from the Vigilante set. You're going to build a little bit of crit, but not a ton. You're not going to like force red crits out of it. And the same with the Flux Rifle. They follow this pattern also. It's not about, and I can show you, it's not like what do we got? This guy. This is built for a huge single tick. So 13k. $26k. 100k. Let's get some more enemies in here. $41k. 41. 9k. 22k. 94k. 68k. 16 and 55. Okay, there we go. 814k. 422k. 388. 143. 616. So this weapon is built for a single massive slash proc. But it's not killing hordes of enemies well. 707. Now let's compare it to like the Flux Rifle. Or actually, let's do the Convectrix. I got a faction ribbon on it. Oh. No, I don't. Ooh, what did I get rid of? There we go. And that goes there. Okay. So 74% crit chance with a 7.4 crit multiplier. We're not hitting reds. Okay. But look at the status chance and the fire rate. $24k. Yeah, 24k, 35k. But it's because I have 25 slash procs on it. So fire rate, status chance, and weighting are the big ones for applying multiple status procs. So when you're building like a melee to do damage, or any weapon, and you're trying to kill with a slash proc that cannot be force proc, you have to consider those more often. So this is just talking about like paired stats, right? Where like they're intrinsically linked more than others. So when you're building, you need to think about what you're actually trying to build with. And another thing that this would show up with is say like Corrosive Builds, right? What do we got? Okay, Sea-Doo. I think this is built for Corrosive. Nope. Viral Heat. Hold on, let me find one that's actually built for corrosive. Oh, you know what? I think I got a Brahma that's corrosive. Weak corrosive. We won't even do that. Cool. So with this weapon, I don't give a crap about statuses, because I'm trying to alpha them. Now, this weapon needs stacks, and frankly, right now, it's a little difficult to get them. Because of the new Merciless changes. But I'm trying to kill them with raw damage. So this would be the primary equivalent of like that Malicious Raptor build. Where I'm just trying to kill them with raw damage, and I'm trying to spike that number as high as possible. So you would want like a monster 60%. Like this is a weak one, I was just testing it out. It's like a 26% electric. But you would need that 60% for this to scale. So this sort of weapon would be super important to get that. If it's like the viral Brahma, I'm just trying to RNG viral for the 100 munitions procs. So it's not super important to get that. But then there's like the heat one. This one's cold. Electric. Okay, toxin. This is the viral one. Right? I'm killing with 100 munitions, so it's more about where you're getting your damage from. So this is just like for your consideration, because you got to think about this when building. If you're killing with crit, you have to think, what are you sacrificing? Can you do like a Weeping Wounds single element scale also? Will it mess with your weighting on your weapons? If you're doing crit damage, can you ignore weighting altogether? Like a corrosive build on a melee that is pure crit with just a monster corrosive weighting still does damage. So this is just food for thought. I wanted to cover a couple things because obviously it's been a couple days since I posted. And it seems to be another 50-minute video. I'm going to stop now. But thank you all for watching if you got this far. This is just talking a little bit about the philosophy on like modding and really thinking about where you're getting your damage. Because when I see a lot of builds, it's like I'm seeing like blast electric. So just consider it. You have to think about what the element does, where you're actually getting your damage from. Are you getting it from procs? Are you getting it from like the damage type being beneficial against that armor type? If you're getting that, you can ignore a lot of things and favor crit more. Obviously, it doesn't scale as well, but it still does hella damage. But if you need procs and you're actually killing with slash, for a primary, you don't care. You can still go with the crit build, which is why 100 munitions is so important. Is because you don't need status to apply the slash status effect. So that's why this mod is broken, because you don't care about status with this mod. You need crit, which is great because slash benefits so heavily from crit. So that's why that mod's so good, and it's why it's part of a lot of late game builds, especially Steel Path and beyond. So anyway, I'm going to end this video just so I'm not 50 minutes. But have a blessed day, guys. First person to comment, Panzer, will get the Panzer Vulpa with all of the resistances on it. And thank you for watching. Have a blessed day, guys.